Hello learners. I welcome you all to the MOOC course on digital humanities theory and practice. In the first lecture we learned that the digital research methods and literature, where we discussed how digital humanities enables us to analyze text, preserve cultural heritage, visualize data and discover new ways of understanding human experiences. Let us now move ahead with today's lecture or the second lecture of the week. 2. This particular lecture is on the digital archives and repositories. Now, digital archives in digital humanities is the managed collection of digital objects, text, images, audio, video, databases, datasets preserved for long term retention and future access. Focus is on the authenticity, integrity, and the accessibility over time. Now, curated collection of digitized or born digital materials, which are text sometimes, images, audios, and videos, organized for long term preservation and scholarly access. Now, digital repository is a system providing storage management and access to digital content. It can serve institutional, subject based, or data preservation purposes. For example, DSpace, Fedora, ePrints. Now, infrastructure systems that store, manage, and provide access to digital objects, and often supporting metadata standards, versioning, and persistent identifiers. Now, importance of digital archives and the repositories. Now, humanities generate vast amount of cultural data, manuscripts, oral histories, artwork, and more. Without robust digital infrastructure, this heritage risks being lost or locked away. Digital archives and repositories are the backbone of digital humanities, enabling research at scale, cross institutional collaboration, and public engagement with cultural heritage. Like for a scale, exponentially growing humanities data unmanageable manually. So that's the scale. The access is there. Democratizing scholarship, crossing geographical and institutional boundaries. That is why we need digital archives and repositories, because we can have the access because of its scalability. Sometimes its preservation, that it safeguards fragile cultural heritage from physical decay. For that we need preservation, so it helps us in preservation of fragile cultural heritage from physical decay. Another importance of digital archives and repository is the interoperability. Now, interoperability means that it enables computational analysis or linking and reuse across connections. The question arises that what is the importance of digital archiving and repositories in literary studies or literature? Now, when we say what literature and the importance of digital archiving in literature is that it gives access to rare literary manuscripts, right? The manuscripts that are there, like for example, in Maulana Azad Library, Aligarh Muslim University, there are certain manuscripts that are extremely rare. So this digitization or digital archives and the repository helps in helps in giving access to the rare literary manuscripts. It helps in preservation of literary heritage. It supports textual comparison. Another importance is it helps in archival research. Another next importance is that provides scholarly references. It also encourages interdisciplinary study, and not last but not the least, it enables global collaboration. Now, which is the most important and which is the demand of the market itself. Now, the good thing about this digital archives and repository is that it has 24 into 7 accessibility. Materials that are there that are archived can be accessed anytime from anywhere across the globe or throughout the globe. Now, the searchability. Now, keywords, you just put the keyword, you get your results. Now, keyword search, metadata search, or the filters, they helps us in searchability. Now, the preservation, of course, as we discussed earlier, that it protects the fragile physical documents that are that are very difficult to keep in a physical form. Another importance can be said that it has a storage capacity, right? So you can store a large collection of the data that can be stored in digital form, whereas it is impossible to keep that data in a physical form. So it helps us in keeping the data in a digital form. Another importance of this digital archiving is that it has open access. I mean, as I already said, that it has 24/7 accessibility. So it has open access also. So things that data is first of all 24/7 accessible. Plus, there are certain tools through which we can access those data free of cost. So open access are there. Many repositories are freely available. Of course, multimedia support is another importance, and another way of getting into the hold of such things, where of text and images and audio, video, and data sets. Yes, so the formats the file has. So if it is if it is supported by your multimedia, then you can access it anytime, anywhere, in any form. Metadata organization. It is simply cataloging for easy retrieval. Now, the difference between digital archives and digital repositories. Now, this is something which is important. Now, digital archives, it focuses on preservation, whereas digital repositories focuses on sharing research. So, archives basically preserve the data, but repository basically focuses on sharing those researches, sharing those data with each and everyone or whosoever in need of that data. For example, like the digital archive example is a university, for example, preserve 100-year-old administrative record and historical photographs for future generations, right? Whereas focus on sharing the research is simply the example could be a university repository stores and shares faculty research paper and student thesis online. Now here, if we look at this thing, that preservation is simply university, for example, is preserving 100-year-old academic record and the historical photograph for future generation. So there, digital archives are will be helping us to preserve that data. But on the other hand, your university repository stores and shares faculty research paper and student theses online, because digital repository is they it help us in sharing that research. So that could be an example of the digital repository. Another difference is the historical material. Digital archives generally take consideration of historical material that belong to our history, because that is something which is invaluable, which does not, it has a value that can never be measured. So some of which is beyond our stretch of imagination if we look at the value of such things, right? So historical materials are generally archived, whereas academic materials are the current journal articles, the conference papers, the dissertation, the teaching material produced by the institution or submitted by any teacher will be kept in digital repositories. Another difference is that the digital archive talks about rare manuscripts or documents, that it generally archive the rare manuscripts, the rare documents that are there. Whereas the digital repositories, because of the fact that it works or on the principle of sharing, so it will have articles, theses, and the papers. Like, for example, original handwritten letter of some national leader, right? Historical photographs. In case of India, for example, the partition photographs, oral history recordings, and the rare manuscripts that are kept or that are generally archived. So, digital archive simply takes rare manuscripts, but digital repositories takes care of article, thesis, paper, research paper, master thesis, doctoral dissertations, data set, presentations, and e-learning material. Now, digital archive, another major difference is that digital archive talks about or it takes consideration of cultural heritage, whereas our digital repositories talks about or takes consideration of scholarly communication, right? For example, in cultural heritage, we can have the archive maintains multiple backup copies, migration strategies, and authenticity check to ensure records remain accessible for decades. Whereas scholarly communication, for example, the repository stores research outputs and many preserve them, but its main goal is making them easily discoverable and downloadable. Now, the types of digital archives and the repositories. The very first in the line is, or the types is, the institutional repositories. Institutional repositories are generally managed by universities or libraries to preserve and share their scholarly output, theses, and the research data. They are run by the universities and the colleges to store theses, research paper, student projects, and faculty publication. Another type of digital archive and repository is the thematic collection and the subject repositories. Now they actually focus on a specific subject, period, or medium. For example, medieval manuscripts, colonial records, or oral history. They belong to a particular theme. They belong to a particular collection, like colonial records. So they are generally archived because that is something which is very valuable for us, right? The oral histories, because we belong to a part of the world which is occidental, and occidental people generally rely on the oral history, on the orality, whereas the occidental people talks about the documentation. So we, the oriental people, archive the oral histories, the medieval manuscripts, right? Another type of digital archiving or the repository is the aggregators and the portals. Now, aggregator and portals are the meta repositories that harvest and federate records from manuscripts or from multiple resources such as Europena or the Digital Public Library of America, right? Another type of digital archive is the open access repositories. Now it is simply freely accessible platform ensuring scholarly material that are available without paywalls, supporting the open science movement. Freely accessible to all, no subscription, no fees needed. So always good for the students. And another type of digital archive is National Cultural Archive. Now, National Cultural Archive is a large repository maintained by the governments or the non-profits to preserve national heritage and make it freely available, because that these are the gems that are belong to the whole country. Then we have another digital archive, that is the dark archive. Now dark archive contain or it is the simply a content that is stored for emergency backup only, and it is not publicly accessible unless the original publisher shuts it down, right? Last but not the least type of digital archive or the repository is the data repository. Like we have Zenodo, ICSSR data services, which is of course there in India, which simply stores raw research data, survey results, experiment data, statistics, so that others can reuse and verify their researches. So again, it is something which is very helpful in conducting researches online or digitally or in any form of the researches. Now, how does a digital archive work? Like we have OIS as Open Archival Information System. Now, this particular OIS model or Open Archive Information System model is a reference framework for the long-term preservation and access of digital information. It was first developed by the Consultative Committee for the Space Data Systems and later adopted as the international standard ISO 14721. The OIS model provides guideline for how a digital archive should receive, preserve, manage, and provide access to digital information over time. Now, it is used by all major digital archive worldwide. So, what they do is they first submit, they store, they manage, they preserve, and then they deliver. But how do they do that? Right? Let's just break down this whole phenomenon. Now, first they submit. So, the creator submits the document or the file. Then it leads to the storage part. It is stored safely with the backup. Then it leads to the manage part. It adds description and metadata, which leads us to the next part, that is preserve, which is check and maintain the file over a period of time. And lastly, deliver, when uses search and downloads. So this is how your digital archive actually works. So there is it works in a particular fashion. It works in a linear fashion, which is submit, store, manage, preserve, and deliver. So three types of information packages in OSs. The first one is submission information package. The second one is archival information package, and the third one is dissemination information package. So as the name are pretty self-explanatory, where we have submission information package talks about the submission, archival means simply archiving, and dissemination means where the information is disseminating. But let's just break down this. That submission information package talks about the file or the document sent by the creator to the archive. All right. So the creator is sending the file or the document. So which is the document or the file sent by the creator to the archive. The archival information package simply talks about the file as stored inside the archive with all the preservation data. And lastly, we have dissemination information package. The file or the document is delivered to the user when they request or download it. This is how our digital archive work. Now, there are certain challenges that are there for the digital archiving and digital repositories. The first is the format obsolescence. Sometimes file becomes unreadable as software becomes outdated. For example, old word star or Lotus 123 files. Now, the file format, software and hardware evolve rapidly, risking loss of access to older digital objects. Now, this is something which is very common in nature. Like sometimes, I mean, in our day-to-day life, we also get to see that. For example, if I have a car, if I don't use it over a period of time, it will get outdated and the engine will get rust and it will not get a start, and then I will not be able to use that. Similarly, that also work in the digital world also, right? Where sometimes because the technology is growing so fast, in the blink of an eye or in the spur of moment, you get another technology. So with this space of moving ahead, file sometimes becomes unreadable. Your software becomes outdated, right? So because of the fact that they becomes unreadable, because of the fact that they becomes software becomes outdated, we have loss or we have a risk of losing out the access to older digital objects. That is one of the challenges that we have in digital archiving, and which is of course the first and the foremost danger or the worrisome thing that needs to be ponder upon. Another challenge for the digital archiving is the digital divide. Now, not everyone in India has an internet access. especially in the rural areas. Digital archives have very limited reach. Now, if I look back to the times, COVID times, it was the government data that our student, only 27% of the Indian population was having the access to the network, access to the internet, right? Similarly, it is the case with the digital divide. Not everyone in India has internet access, especially in the rural areas. And when you don't have the access in the rural areas, when you don't have the access to internet in the rural areas, you will not be able to access the digital archive. So it is very unfortunate, but we are growing, we are developing towards a better tomorrow, and hopefully will this won't be a challenge anymore in our future. Another challenge that I could think of was rights and ethics. Yes, sometimes you get copyright issues. Many old work still have copyrights. Legal barriers prevent digitization and sharing. Navigating copyrights, indigenous data sovereignty, and the privacy concern in publicly accessible archives. Yes, old works where people are not there anymore. They passed away. For example, sometimes the original author is not there now. In order to work on the same project, it is not. It's very difficult to get the copyrights, right? So for that, it is something where we are lacking, and it is something where it creates it is certainly a challenge for us to access those files, to access those data, to access those archive where we do not have the original author, the original, or anyone who has the copyrights. So we cannot actually reach out to that person. So that could be another challenge. And without reaching out to that person, the copyright issues will always be there, or the plagiarism problems will always be there, right? So many old works still have copyrights, and where legal barriers prevent digitization and sharing. So, navigating the copyrights, indigenous data sovereignty, and the privacy concern in publicly accessible archives. Now, another challenge in our digital archiving and digital repository is the cost and the fundings. Sometimes your IT staff is very expensive, because obviously not everybody is a trained one, right? So people who are trained, sometimes they are very expensive, they are unaffordable. Sometimes your servers, to maintain that server is very expensive. It costs you so much that people forget about archiving those things. So either you need a good government funding, only then you will be able to archive certain data. So maintaining those server is not everyone's cup of tea. So there you need serving, there you need the fundings, right? So costing and the funding becomes a challenge in order to digital archive, in order to archiving something digitally. So your sometimes electricity. So places like the the suburban areas, so if you manage to get access to something, but there the problem is you do not have electricity, or we do not have power backup. Sometimes, I mean, of course, it is something which is not frequently it is not frequently encountered or witnessed in our day-to-day life. But yes, electricity sometimes becomes a problem in digitally archiving something. Long-term funding is a challenge for institution. Obviously, in order to maintain the server, in order to maintain the whole setup for digital archiving, or in order to maintain that archive in itself, is a challenge for institution for a longer period of time. Lack of trained staff is another challenge. Yes, this is something which is again, which does not seem to be very big problem, but in itself, something which is very big problem. Where most of the Indian colleges lack trained digital archivists and library information professionals. So what we generally do is, if somebody gets that skill without without going to any college, without getting a degree, so what we do is we hire that person. So I mean, there's nothing wrong in hiring that person, but still, if a person who has a degree in that, who is a trained in archiving, so it will always be a better and a beneficial for archiving any rare manuscript or any historical data, because we are actually concerned with something which is invaluable. Now, what are the innovations, or what is the scope of digital archiving, and what are the future trends that are there? Now, AI and machine learning and automated transcription or entity recognition and semantic search unlock hidden patterns in large collections. The automated transcription and entity recognition and semantic search and unlocking the hidden pattern in the large collection. The second one is linked open data. Now, it simply connects the archive through shared ontologies, and it enables cross collection queries and knowledge graph construction. The third one that is there is the community archiving, or the next one is the community archiving, which is that the last in my flow in my chart. Community archiving is simply a crowdsourcing and participatory model that empowers the communities and contribute to and shape their own heritage records. Then we have decentralized preservation. It simply blockchains and distributes the storage that offer new models for tamper-proof, resilient, long-term preservation. Then the next one that we have is the cloud storage. Now, services like AWS, Google Cloud offer cheap and scalable as storage for digital repositories. Then we have mobile first access. It simply archives the optimized for smartphones so rural students in India can access resources. And then multilingual archives. It's simply growing efforts to archive and provide access to content in all 22 official Indian languages. So these are the trends that are actually running in India, especially specifically for the rural students, so that they can simply access the resources, and in even in 22 official languages. So which is phenomenal. Now, exemplary projects across world. Now, these are the projects that are running across the globe. The first one is Europeana and Internet Archive, Haiti Trust, Trove, which is Australian. Now, let us discuss that in brief. What is Europeana? How does it work? And what is Internet Archive? I mean, I'm sure many people are aware of Internet Archive. Hathi Trust is a very famous one, and Trove is also a very famous tool or famous project that is running across the world. Now, Europeana is a major digital platform that provides online access to European cultural heritage, and it brings together millions of digitized items from libraries, museums, archives, galleries, and audiovisual collection across Europe. So basically, it is specifically for Europe. So it works in Europe's digital cultural heritage platform, aggregating more than 60 plus million items from over 4,000 institutions across 40 countries. The next one that we have in the line is your Internet Archive, a non-profit library preserving website, books, audio, and software, home to Wayback Machine, and over 835 billion web pages are there. Trust me, this is something which is phenomenal. Then we have Haiti Trust. Haiti Trust Digital Library is one of the world digital largest library repositories of digitized books, journals, and other scholarly material. It is a collaborative initiative of academic and research libraries dedicated to preserving and providing access to the scholarly record. And it's a partnership of 140 plus research libraries providing access to 18 plus million digitized volumes with robust right managements. The last we have is the Trove. I mean, of course, there are lots of, but the last that I could think of was the Trove NLA, which is from Australia. Now, Trove is Australia's national online discovery platform that provides access to a wide range of cultural and historical and researcher resources. It was launched in 2009. It is simply a discovery service connecting users to 6 billion resources from Australian libraries, museums, and archives. Now, these are some of the programs that are running in India. For example, Shodh Ganga, which is the National Repository of Indian Doctoral Theses. Over 5 lakh theses from universities across India, which are free to access. We have Shodh Sindhu that provides access to e-journals and databases for colleges and universities. UGC funded subscription for all Indian higher education institutions. Unbelievable. National Mission for Manuscripts. Another one is which is simply documenting and digitizing India's 10 million plus handwritten manuscripts in Sanskrit, Arabic, Persian, and regional languages. For example, we have the next one that is a National Digital Library. It's a single window portal for educational resources which have 90 plus million learning materials in 70 plus languages and all free for students. Digital Library of India preserves rare books, manuscripts, and out of print books. Over 5.5 lakhs scanned books in Indian languages. And then, of course, CSIR repositories, which has open access to CSIR research journals and scientific publication, which are always useful for scientific students or science students across India. Now, for conclusion, as I can say that foundational infrastructure is one of the important factor here, which means that the digital archives and repositories provides the foundation and the resources that digital humanities researcher needs to do their work. Challenges require collaboration. Yes, of course, some problems that are too big or too difficult for one person or one organization to solve alone. So people need to work together to find solutions. Preservations, right, funding, challenges, demand, cross-institutional and international cooperation. Lastly, we have innovation opens new frontiers. Of course, AI linked data and community archiving are reshaping what digital humanities can achieve. With this, the future of cultural heritage is digital and it depends on the archives we build today. Thank you so much. With this, we come to an end of today's lesson. With another lesson, I shall be with you with another lesson. Till then, goodbye. Thank you so much.